Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're going to explore a story about a fruit most of us probably don't think twice about picking up at the store.
You mean the pineapple?
The one and only.
Ah, yes, the pineapple. It's practically synonymous with Hawaii.
Exactly. But the story of how it got there and how it became such a symbol of the islands is, well, it's anything but straightforward.
It's a fascinating tale full of ambition, innovation, and, yeah, some pretty dark historical shadows, too.
So to guide us on this deep dive, we'll be looking at Wondery's American History Tellers podcast, Season 56, Episode 2, Hawaii, the Pineapple King.
Catchy title, right.
Definitely grabs your attention. Okay, so picture this. It's the late 1800s. Hawaii has recently been annexed by the United States, and the sugar industry is booming.
Sugar was king, absolutely.
But enter James Dole, fresh out of Harvard, with this, I guess you could say, audacious dream to make pineapples the next big thing.
You have to remember the context here. The Hawaiian monarchy had just been overthrown with the backing of powerful figures with deep ties to the sugar industry.
And Dole's own family was right in the thick of it too, right?
Oh yeah, his cousin, Sanford Dole, actually became the first president of the Republic of Hawaii. So James Dole arrives on the scene with this idea of diversifying the island's agriculture, perhaps as a way to, legitimize the whole situation.
Makes sense. But here's the thing. Dole had absolutely zero experience in farming. He buys land in Waihioa, this area known for its dry conditions and strong winds, and starts experimenting with everything. Watermelons, grapes, you name it.
Nothing really took off, though, until he landed on pineapples, that is. And even then, many people consider them a lost cause.
Oh, really? I never knew that. Why is that?
Well, for starters, they were tough to grow, easily bruised, and spoiled incredibly quickly. It was a logistical nightmare.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Hmm?
But Dole didn't give up, did he?
Not at all. He was relentless, making mistake after mistake, but always learning from each setback.
Like what kind of mistakes?
Well, for example, he initially treated the soil with lime, thinking it would improve the crop yield, not realizing that pineapples actually thrive in acidic soil. It was a costly mistake, but a valuable lesson learned.
Trial and error, huh?
Exactly. And eventually, he realized that fresh pineapple was simply too difficult to transport and sell on a large scale, especially to the mainland U.S., which was his target market.
So what did he do?
He shifted his focus to canning, figuring that was the key to cracking the American market.
Smart move. But canning on a large scale requires serious capital, right?
Absolutely. And that's where the Hawaiian Pineapple Company comes in. Dole establishes the company in 1901 to attract the investment he needs to scale up his operation.
And he finds some pretty influential backers, doesn't he? Some with, shall we say, interesting connections to the events that led to the overthrow of the monarchy.
Right, there were definitely some political strings being pulled. He even partnered with Joseph Hunt of the Hunt brothers, a major player in the fruit packing industry.
So they had the experience in the network to really push Dole's vision forward.
Precisely. But even with all that backing, the early days of the Hawaiian Pineapple Company were anything but smooth sailing. Imagine dealing with exploding cans due to faulty sealing, a laborious and time-consuming canning process.
Sounds like they had their work cut out for them.
They were constantly racing to keep up with the growing demand for canned pineapple.
And this is where Dole's obsession with efficiency really comes into play, right?
Absolutely. He understood that to meet the demand and make pineapple a truly mainstream product, he needed to revolutionize the production process.
And he finds the perfect partner to do just that, doesn't he?
Enter Henry Ganaka, an incredibly talented inventor who partners with Dole, and together they developed this groundbreaking automated pineapple processing machine.
I've heard about this. It was a total game changer, wasn't it?
Like Henry Ford's assembly line, but for pineapples.
Uh-huh.
Production skyrockets, and it happens right at the moment they launch this brilliant marketing campaign that really emphasizes the quote-unquote superior taste of Hawaiian pineapples.
And those images they use, the hula dancers, the lush tropical landscapes, they cleverly linked the pineapple to this image of Hawaii as paradise.
Pure marketing genius. And it worked like a charm. Demand for Hawaiian pineapple just kept climbing, but then...
Oh no, what happened?
Then the 1907 financial crisis hits. Suddenly, pineapples, which were seen as a luxury item, are no longer flying off the shelves.
So what does Dole do? Give up?
Not a chance. This is where Dole's collaborative spirit shines. He realizes he can't weather this storm alone, so he joins forces with other pineapple growers to form the Hawaiian Pineapple Growers Association.
Strength in numbers.
Exactly. They pool their resources and launch a nationwide marketing blitz, educating the public about how versatile pineapples are, sharing recipes, and really hammering home that message: Hawaiian pineapples are the best.
And it works.
It does. Demand bounces back and sales reach new heights. But this booming industry, the success story, raises a big question. Who is actually doing all the work?
That's a good point. Who was working on these pineapple plantations?
Hawaii had a long history of relying on immigrant labor, and with the Chinese Exclusion Act still in effect, Dole's workforce was made up primarily of Japanese laborers, along with Portuguese and a growing number of Filipinos.
And the podcast describes a very clear hierarchy on these plantations.
Oh, yeah. White Americans and Europeans at the top, Portuguese foremen in the middle, and mostly Asian laborers at the bottom. Long hours, low wages, and the constant risk of injury from the machinery.
Dole had a reputation for fairness, but he was also a businessman driven by profit and growth. So how did he reconcile those two things?
It's a complex question. He did implement certain benefits for workers, like showers and daycare, but were those out of genuine concern or a calculated move to increase productivity and morale?
Tough to say. A bit of both, perhaps.
Maybe. It certainly benefited the company. To counter the risk of worker injury and to further improve efficiency, Dole saw automation as the answer. Ganaka's invention had been a huge step, but the drive for even greater efficiency continued.
And that drive, that ambition, it leads Dole down a path that would change everything. So Dole's drive for efficiency and innovation leads him to a really, a pretty audacious endeavor. The Dole Air Race of 1927.
Yeah, this race was a huge deal at the time. It was inspired by, Charles Lindbergh's transatlantic flight, and it was supposed to be this grand showcase for the potential of aviation.
And of course, a great way to get Dole's name out there even more.
Exactly. The goal was to fly from Oakland, California, all the way to Honolulu, Hawaii.
That's over 2,400 miles over the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, a pretty daunting feat in 1927.
What was the prize for the winner?
A whopping $25,000. You can imagine how much money that was back then. So naturally, it attracted a lot of attention.
The podcast talks about how the whole nation was gripped by this race.
It was front page news.
But it wasn't all smooth flying, was it?
Tragically, no. There were several crashes even before the race officially began.
And then, out of the 8 planes that actually took off from Oakland,
only 2 of them made it to Honolulu.
3 planes just vanished without a trace, including the one carrying Mildred Doran,
a young school teacher who had become like a symbol of the race.
The public was really rooting for her.
It was a devastating loss, and it really cast a shadow over the whole event.
Dole himself was deeply affected by the tragedies, wasn't he?
Yeah, he expressed a lot of regret over the loss of life and vowed to never be involved in aviation again.
It seemed like this event, intended to be this triumph of technology and human spirit, ended up becoming a reminder of just how dangerous and unforgiving aviation could be at that time.
Definitely. And this whole thing happened at a time when Dole's company was already starting to face new challenges.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, competition in the pineapple market was heating up. Companies like Del Monte were emerging as serious rivals, and they were starting to chip away at Dole's market share.
But Dole was never one to back down from a challenge.
No, he wasn't. He continued to expand his operations, buying more land in Hawaii. And then in 1922, he makes this really bold move. He buys the entire island of Lanai.
The entire island?
The whole thing.
Wow. What was he planning to do with it?
Lanai was sparsely populated back then, mostly covered in cacti, and Dole saw it as this blank canvas for creating a massive pineapple plantation.
And that's exactly what he did, right?
Yeah. He poured millions of dollars into developing the island, building a harbor, roads, housing for workers, a water system, and of course, he planted pineapples. Lots and lots of pineapples.
The podcast says that Lanai eventually became responsible for something like 75% of the world's pineapple production. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a pretty mind-boggling feat of agricultural engineering, but it also raises some uncomfortable questions about the impact of large-scale agriculture on indigenous populations.
Right, because the native Hawaiians who lived on Lanai were essentially displaced to make way for Dole's plantations.
It's a reminder that progress, it often comes at a cost. And for Dole, that cost was about to become painfully clear as the 1920s drew to a close.
Because the Great Depression hit?
Exactly. And demand for pineapples, which were seen as a luxury item, just plummeted. Dole's company, which was all geared up for record production, suddenly found itself with warehouses full of unsold cans.
They must have been losing money hand over fist.
They were. And the shareholders, panicked by these mounting losses, they decided to take action.
What did they do?
They ousted Dole as general manager in 1932.
So the Pineapple King was dethroned.
In a sense, yes. Castle and Cooke, one of the big five, those powerful sugar corporations that had invested in Dole's company, they ended up taking control.
It's a pretty dramatic fall from grace, isn't it?
It is. But even though he was no longer at the helm, Dole's impact on Hawaii is undeniable.
He transformed the island's agriculture, making pineapples a major industry.
And he played a key role in shaping how Americans viewed Hawaii.
All those marketing campaigns, those images of hula girls and tropical paradise, they really turned Hawaii into this exotic tourist destination.
Yeah. But it's important to remember that this romanticized image of Hawaii often clashed with the reality for many Native Hawaiians who found themselves increasingly marginalized as tourism boomed.
It's a complex legacy for sure.
Dole was a visionary entrepreneur who brought a lot of prosperity to Hawaii, but he also benefited from a system built on exploiting immigrant labor and displacing Native populations. And in the end, not even his incredible success could shield him from the forces of history.
The Great Depression really washed away much of what he had built.
And yet, his name is still synonymous with pineapples.
So it's like Dole's story, it didn't really end with the Great Depression, did it?
No, not at all. It kind of continues to unfold in a way. The same challenges he faced, the competition, the economic ups and downs, even those labor issues.
They're all still playing out today.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder, even if you're super successful, you got to be ready to adapt. I mean, Dole was always looking for ways to improve, whether it was new technology or just thinking differently about how to market his pineapples.
Yeah, and that's true for any business, really. You have to innovate to survive.
Absolutely. So this deep dive,
It's been pretty eye-opening, hasn't it? I mean, who knew there was so much history packed into a pineapple?
Right. It just goes to show you everything has a story. And Dole's story, it touches on so many big things in American history. You've got colonialism, industrialization, even the birth of consumer culture.
It's all there wrapped up in this little spiky fruit.
Exactly. So before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with one last thought, something to, chew on.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So Dole's company, it eventually became part of the Dole Food Company, right? That's like a global giant now, one of the biggest fruit producers in the world. What do you think James Dole, the guy who started it all, would make of it?
That's a good question. I mean, on the one hand, you've got this massive global pineapple market that he basically helped create. But then there's this growing concern about sustainability, labor practices.
Right. Consumers are way more aware of these issues now, and there's a lot of pressure on companies to do better.
So it's like his legacy is still being written, in a way?
I think so. And it's up to all of us as consumers to really think about the impact of our choices.
That's a great point to end on. So, deep divers, we've explored the rise and fall of the Pineapple King, uncovered some surprising history, and hopefully left you with some food for thought. Until next time, keep exploring.